What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good With Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Joe Martin. Joe is the founder of Relentless Positivity Fitness and the author of the book, You're Not Who You're Going to Be, which is based on the statistic that the second leading cause of death of kids between age 10 and 14 is suicide. Absolutely incredible statistic. He said once he found that statistic, he knew he had to do something about it. So he started doing some research, doing some digging, put this book together to help parents of kids in that age range to be able to overcome that tendency. But this is a very wide-ranging conversation. Joe actually in his late teens, early 20s, had his own depressive state where he almost took his own life because he had some unfortunate events come along, which many of us do, and found himself in a mentally bad state. He ended up changing that, of course, and one of the things that brought him out of that was figuring out how to serve others. And he started and ended up doing that through fitness. He figured out that that's actually how he changed his body and changed his own mental uh, capabilities. And he wanted to do the same thing for others. So we talk about that progression. We talk about how he went from working a corporate job to working a corporate job, a part-time job, and opening a business, to then having a kid, to then eventually being able to quit the part-time job and full-time job to then focus on his business. That transition was super cool to hear from Joe. But we talk about so many different things. This is such a wide-ranging conversation. I know you guys will appreciate it. Make sure that you share this with anybody, number one, who has kids in that age range, because we do go in depth on some things that you can do for those kids to help reduce their risk of a depressive state. Also, you can share this with anybody who's like on the verge of maybe quitting their job to become an entrepreneur. I would say that's something we talk about a lot in this conversation because that's something Joe did. That's not something that I did. I've been an entrepreneur business owner for pretty much all of my adult career, if you will. But that's something that Joe did. And Joe's like, his main point is the way that he puts it. It's not the way that I would put it because we all tend to downplay our own abilities. But the way that he puts it is, I'm a dumb dude and I don't know nothing. So if I can do it, you can do it. And to be sure, yes, if you've done any kind of work in your life, you can run a business. It's just what size business do you really want? You just want to have something that's just you. You can do that easily, but you just have to decide to do it. And you can surpass the current income that you have. You can surpass the benefits and everything. You do some basic calculations and figure out the benefits and what those cost. You'll be surprised at what you can do. Like, you'll be surprised. At any rate, before I go down that rabbit hole anymore, um, make sure that you get your pen and paper out so that you can take some notes and enjoy this conversation with Joe Martin. Joe, whenever we came into this, I was coming into this doing some research and trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about and where I wanted to go. And I'm like, man, this is going to be an easy conversation because Joe and I have already talked. We already know each other. We follow each other on social. So, like, I have a general idea of where things probably will go. And then I started digging and I found your TEDx talk. And I'm like, oh damn, there's a lot more to the story, which there's always the case, but I was hoping I don't want to say I hope I find something because I hope something's wrong, but nonetheless, like I wanted to start digging to see what I could find and there's definitely something there. So your story I can resonate with. Now I don't know if it's quite as deep. We'll get into it in a second. I've definitely gone through one deep depressive episode myself in my early 20s, and then recently we were talking about before, and we talked on your podcast about me closing the gym and getting divorced all in the same time. And I think I had some, I wouldn't call it super depressive, like in-depth depressive episodes like most people think about that kind of thing. But certainly I had some, wavering mental feelings during that time, like definitely. But I can resonate with it. So I know how challenging it is. So if we can go back to that time, um, talk to me about what was going on during during that time and what got you into that depressive episode?
Yeah, man, it was kind of a combination of events. So kind of take it back. I was an athlete growing up. Football was my main sport. I was on the basketball team. I practiced a lot, didn't play a lot. I was there though. So I figured
I
I'm gonna put all my eggs in this football basket. That was kind of my thing. So I was like, man, I was a tight end, but I was a big guy and I couldn't catch. So guess what? You are an offensive lineman. So I became an offensive lineman. So I kept getting bigger. I tried to get bigger and faster and stronger. I got bigger and fatter and stronger. Because if you're gonna be running into other big fat guys, you kind of need some weight on you. So I gained some weight. I was a bigger guy, and ended up playing my last couple of years with a broken wrist, and I was going to have surgery and be in a cast for 6 months. So kind of the football career was going away. At the same time, I go to jail. I'm arrested. I'm put on probation. My girlfriend breaks up with me. My grandma dies. Even the family pet dies. Just all these things just back to back to
Wow.
back to back. It just all kind of came together. And when something like that happens, all you focus on is the bad things, 6 inches from your face. I had a lot of good things going on outside of that, but I couldn't see them. All I focused on was the darkness, and I kept going down this spiral. And at the time I was broke, didn't have a car, so my mom used to have to take me to probation. If you want to talk about kind of the
Wow.
lowest of the
Yeah.
low, man, so I would get her to drop me off like a couple blocks away. You can't have your mom bring you up to the probation office,
Yeah.
right? So, man, I remember one time just dropping her off. There's an address right here in town that I see it all the time. And man, I remember she dropped me off there. And I remember being on that walk like, man, I can't live like this. I've let everyone down, let myself down. I'm not going anywhere. The football thing's over. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I was going to end it all. And I just got to that point, and I just kind of decided, number one, I couldn't do that to my parents. And number two, I'm a man of faith. I wouldn't have, we went to church growing up, but it wasn't like a big Christian at the time, but it was kind of had that deep in my heart from growing up in church, like the kind of two things. And I said, well, if I'm not going to end it, then I got to figure this thing out. So, man, I just figured out, well, number one, I don't like looking at myself in the mirror every day. I'm overweight. I'm out of shape. That was fine when I was playing football, but now I just got all this extra weight for no reason. So I was like, I'm going to address that. And I just started by looking at food labels. This is pre-internet, kids. You got to
Yeah.
do your own research and look at
Yeah.
things. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I'm from Alabama, man. We don't do nutrition.
They're like, you knew what? Here, just eat this. You'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just started there and then started doing some different exercise and different things. And eventually I lost 50 pounds and felt amazing. And I was like, man, I would love to help other people do the same thing. So it kind of put me on the path.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's I'm telling you, once it starts to layer, what's the saying? When it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
And I think partly it is because when it starts to rain, you start to pay attention to the rain, and then you keep paying attention and you keep paying attention. So then it feels like it's pouring. Now, certainly there are times in life where things like things happen like that. Those subsequent those events, those were all real events, and certainly they were all what most people would deem as negative events. So most definitely, like it was pouring during that time. Um, and yet on the other side, like you said, you have an opportunity to look at those events differently and still have other things in your life. Like that's a part of your life. There's other parts of your life around you as well. When I was going through the divorce and everything just recently, like very easy for me to just focus on those things, the things I couldn't control, the things that were going crazy, the things that were leaving my life. Like it was very easy for me to focus on that. And I know for a fact, since it was so recent, when I would focus on those things is when I felt most sad, when I felt most anxious and depressed, and when I felt like, man, this things won't get any better than this, right? Um, but I had done enough work up to that point to be able to start to turn it around. Now, as a youngster, where you were, I'm assuming that was right around your late teens, early 20s ish, something in that realm.
Yeah, that's it.
Um, Most youngsters at that age don't have a whole lot of self development going on, mental self development going on. So it sounds like you decided to turn it around. How did you decide to turn it around? Like, was it just like a moment in your mind, like, hey, I know that I can't do it because of my family and my religion, so I just got to figure this out? Um, where did you start to just like slowly take steps in a better direction? Like, what that process look like?
Well, I started looking at my life and just deciding, what I've been doing, kind of looking like almost a forensic check of what I've been doing with my life. And I realized I'd just been focused on all the negativity. I had good things around me. I had other opportunities that were, just within arm's reach. I had a great family life, I had all these opportunities and things going on in my life that I just completely ignored because I chose to focus on the darkness, right? But when I chose, it's one thing. I'm gonna lean on my family right now. They do anything for me, right? They'd love to help me out any way they can. So, and then next thing, it's almost like if you're a frog going across a pond, I go from one lily pad to the next. Like, oh well, here's this. Oh man, I got all these great friends in my life. I got this. Like, oh, maybe I could start at the community college and get an education there. Just these little things that were there the whole time. I was just ignoring them because I had my blinders on. I was just going to be in my little pity party at all times. So, but man, it was a physical deal. There's days where I woke up and it was everything I do to get out of bed. It was like squatting 1,000 pounds just to get out of that bed, man. So it wasn't just a mental thing, like, oh, I feel sad. It manifests as a physical thing because it affects. You know how it is. You're a fitness guy too. It all rolls together. Mental, physical, emotional. It all rolls together. So, man, it went from there. Just jumping from lily pad to lily pad. Next thing I know, I'm looking around like, hey, things aren't so bad. I think I can make this work.
Very nice. I think the other thing that probably played a part in it, again, being young, it's kind of also a good thing, even though youngsters don't do a lot of self-development and like mental development. Like you don't realize you don't need that stuff until usually later on. But at the same time, being young, you're not as ingrained. Like you don't have the ingrained patterns that an adult has, or the ingrained beliefs that an adult has. Like an adult, and at 40, you've if you believe that things are bad and things are not going well, and you've believed it for a long time, then it's much harder to turn that around. Whereas at a young age, your 20s or so, it's not quite as it's still hard for sure, because any depressive state is hard to get out of. But nonetheless, you haven't had that recurring compounding factor built on top of each other. So in your TED talk, you said there were three things that you did. Um, you wanted to serve others, you wanted to laugh early and often, and you wanted to be relentlessly positive, which is now the name of your fitness business and your podcast, which is super cool. I was cool to like close that circle
Yeah.
when I figured that out. But how did you come up with those three? Do you remember, or did they just kind of like fall in line and you were just in retrospect, you're like, hey, I just started doing these things.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it worked. Like I
Yeah.
just realized when I was serving others, my problems all went away.
Hmm.
Right. And I still do that today, especially as a business owner. When business is not going very well, I'm gonna go out and serve someone else. It doesn't always fix the financials, right? But sometimes it just gets the wheels moving and gets you out of that space where you're just focused on, oh man, not gonna make payroll this month. There are all these different things. And you go out and serve somebody. I'm one of those people, hey, I believe it's gonna come back around. And it's showing itself over and over. And if nothing else, it gets me in the correct headspace to go out and get back what I'm supposed to be doing. And one thing for me, I'm gonna work out every day. I'm gonna do some sort of movement, some sort of activity because I discovered now, I mean, I'll still slide back into those kind of episodes if I'm not eating right, if I'm not sleeping right, if I'm stressed out, if I'm relying on caffeine or alcohol or all these different things. If I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, it'll start coming back in. So if you're one of those people that is susceptible like myself, then give yourself the best fighting chance possible. It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to be a cure all for all that. It's not a magic thing, but it will give you the best chance possible. And that's what I've seen on that. And then, just my thing when I look back on my life, when the worst times of your life, kind of when you're able to laugh for that first time, it's kind of a signal that, hey man, I think we're gonna get through this. I think I'm gonna be okay. My family's big on laughter. We'll be one of those people laughing in funeral homes and things like that. Looks very inappropriate, but man, that's how we hey, this isn't good, but we're gonna get through this. That's kind of that signal that, hey, we're gonna be all right.
For sure. There was a line that I put. So when I closed the gym, I sent an email out to everybody maybe a month before we closed to let them know what was coming up or what was happening. And the line that I put at the end was, this is not my quote, by the way, this came from somebody else, but it's something like, don't be sad. Don't be sad that it's ending. Be glad that it happened.
Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. Like at a funeral, when you think about laughing and joking at a funeral, like you said, society looks at that and goes, what are you laughing about? But at the same time, I've also thought about this differently. If that person wants you to be sad, then I don't want to say that maybe they're not worth being sad about, but why would they want you to be sad? Why would they
Right.
not want you to think about the positive things that you went through with them? Why would they not want you to be thinking and joking about the things that happened in life? Like to think about the positive things that happened in life. And when you think about those situations and those experiences, generally they bring back positive feelings and you smile and you laugh about them. So it's the same thing. It's a different way to think about it.
Yeah, that's just way I cope with things. Maybe it's not for everybody, but that's me. But I lost my brother a couple of years ago, man. And just we're laughing and cutting up afterwards and all that. But also, man, I'm gonna honor his memory on how I live my life going forward, right? So he's no longer here. He can't do these things that I want to be able to do. I'm gonna do in his honor, right? So that's how their name never goes away. If you keep them in your memory like that, you can go do great things. It motivates me. Man, they're not gone. They're not here anymore. But man, I can live and just show his boys what they can do. He left twin boys behind. Just I can be an example to them and do these different things. So it's a sad time for sure. But man, it's not the end. That's just the beginning for a lot of things. That's kind of where my relentless positivity thing comes. I guess I get a little pushback on that, but it's not like this Pollyanna view of the world where, oh, awesome, my house is on fire. Let's get some marshmallows and roast these marshmallows. It's just choosing to focus on the positive. Just like that's what I learned from my life when I was focused on all the negative stuff. Guess where it led me, right? Now I get a choice. Like when you wake up every day, you get to, my whole thing is attitude and effort. You talked earlier about things you don't have any control over. That's the most frustrating thing in life is that's where you focus on. But man, when you focus on your attitude and how much effort you're putting into, you got 100% control of those. That's going to increase your happiness. I tell the guys that I coach and some of the women I coach that, hey, AAA action alleviates anxiety. If there's a problem, do something about it. Even if something small, even if it's just planning something, like you're trying to lose weight. But if you just, oh man, I got to lose 50 pounds, that's all you're focused on, but you're not doing anything about it, it doesn't get any better. But even if you just plan out a couple meals, you feel so much better about the situation. Nothing's changed. Problem's still there. You still have to lose those pounds, but you feel like you're back in control. And that's so important.
Mm. Action alleviates anxiety. I love that. And again, lots of truth to that because I believe that that's why a lot of people are so anxious about their lives now anyway. Like, of course, most people, I was going to say, maybe it's not most, it's definitely most are unhealthy in some way, shape, or form. Like, I, the statistic I heard recently was like 70% of people are overweight or obese, 50% of adults have type 2 diabetes, another 30% are pre-diabetic. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are also unhappy. And what they don't recognize is that a lot of that unhappiness is due to the inaction that they have in their life, the progress that they have in their life, um, built a lot around their health. Like just the action of getting better in your health will actually improve your mood and make you feel better and make you feel happier. But a lot of people don't make that connection because we have connected exercise to being in trouble. Like whenever you got in trouble, what'd you do? You went and ran laps or you went and did something bad. Like that's what we've correlated to. We've correlated eating good to dieting, and people think of dieting as a negative thing. So because we have these negative correlations to things that are just the way we should be living life, we don't do them, and then we don't do them, and then we get unhappy, and then we get unhealthy, and it just starts to compound, and we don't see those correlations.
That is so true. And you all think about like during the pandemic, people are focused on, oh my gosh, the lockdowns and the pandemic, I'm going to do this and that. Absolutely no control over that, right? You're not the president. You're not, the Center for Disease Control. You have no power on that. What you do have control over is taking care of your own health and giving yourself the best fighting chance possible. Like I talked earlier about mental health. People are always I saw this post about this nutritionist I follow. He said, if you're wearing a mask and you're social distancing, but your shopping cart at the grocery store is full of sugar and alcohol and all, he said, you are not taking this pandemic seriously, right? So if you're doing all these other precautions, but not taking care of your whole body and your health, then you're not taking it seriously as you can. So control what you can control, and I think you'll be a much happier person.
No doubt about that. So, how did you get yourself to stay focused on the things you could control as you were kind of getting yourself moving forward back then? Because I think another thing, which we'll get into in a second, uh, it's a very prevalent thing today, like depression and anxiety, very prevalent today, which is, I believe, why you wrote your book, which again we'll get into. But if the more people can see that you can control more than you control, but the main thing you have to start to control is what goes on in your head, the more you can start to take those steps because your ways of thinking are currently just your ways of thinking. It's just what you're focusing on. The analogy that I like to use is it's just the window you're currently looking out of. The, if the window you're currently looking out of is raining, you're like, damn, it's raining. It makes me sad. But then you look over at this window and you're like, man, it's sunny at this window. What's going on with that? You can choose which window to look out of. And that's what we're talking about here. So in those moments, how did you keep yourself focused on on those things you can't control?
So I'm older, maybe some of your audience. I'm pushing 50 right now, man. So I go
Grateful
back to
50.
I'm getting there, man. So the Bill Walsh 49ers, that's kind of who I grew up with watching. And he had a saying, the scoreboard takes care of itself. Meaning if you're down there doing what you're supposed to do, if you're supposed to be blocking the A gap, you block the A gap. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Don't worry about what the quarterback or the left guard or anybody else is doing. You do your job and you do what you're supposed to do, the steps you're supposed to take care of, and the scoreboard will take care of itself. Everybody does what they're supposed to do, then we win the game, right? But if you're focused on everybody else, what they're doing in the world, and oh my gosh, if you take it back to weight loss, we're fitness guys, we kind of where it all goes. If I was worried about, oh my gosh, I have all this weight to lose, I have 50 pounds to lose, uh, man, that would have just got overwhelmed. But I just focused on what I can control, what I put in my body, how I move my body, how much, when I move my body, all these things that I can control, I can do that. And then, oh my gosh, next thing you know, I lost 5 pounds here, 10 pounds there. And I was just consistent about it because I worried about what I was doing, not hey, sometimes the scale will go up, sometimes go down. But, I kept doing the things that were working and I knew it would eventually get there. And like I said, the scoreboard eventually did take care of itself.
At what point did you decide to transition your, it seems like, developing care and love for fitness to wanting to do that for other people?
Yeah, that was right when I lost that weight. When I was like, oh man, this feels amazing. See, I remember, just not that weight's everything, but when I woke up and looked at myself in the mirror, it was just kind of a reminder that all the things I had failed at and I wasn't who I wanted to be or where I wanted to be in life. It's kind of a visual reminder. So man, if I could just do that, and then I felt proud of myself, right? That I was like, oh man, I did this thing, right? I put my mind to it. I set the plan, followed through. It's just an amazing feeling that I would love to help other people because like I said, your weight doesn't define you or anything like that. But man, I just didn't feel good. My joints hurt, my back was hurting, my neck was hurting, all these different things, and I would just feel I have no energy. And energy is kind of the currency of life, right? Man, when you got energy, you can do anything in the world, just about it seems like. But when you wake up every morning, you can barely get out of bed, and you're sluggish all day long. You're not going to accomplish much. You just don't feel like the right way, and you just feel like, man, what am I doing? So I was able to just feel that and like, okay, if I can do this for one other person in my life, that would be amazing.
And what did that look like? How did you start to dabble in the training portion of it?
Yeah, so I went to Auburn University, got me an exercise physiology degree, and
Auburn, the Tigers,
yeah,
the
that's right.
Tigers.
Yeah, we live in the state with that other Alabama team. That's pretty rough.
What's
They've
their
been
they're
really
red
good
something. I don't
past few years. It's been a rough neighbor to have as your rival, but yeah. So I
know.
went and graduated from Auburn, and then I got a job working on the military installation around here, where I got to train. I train an 18-year-old private who couldn't pass a PT test. The next day, I'd be training an 85-year-old World War II veteran and everything in between, civilians, military, everybody. So I got to train all kind of different populations. It was a great experience.
That's very cool. You said that was how'd you end up finding that job?
So I did an internship on there. So the last we were on quarter system back in the day. That's how old I am, and they were, hey, you gotta go do an internship. So I got to pay to go work somewhere. Is basically what I did. But eventually got hired on there. So it's MWR. If you ever heard of your military people out there, it's morale, welfare, recreation. So they run the gyms and kind of the bowling alleys and different things for the troops on the bases. So I got a job on there after my internship.
That's very cool. Yeah, that is for a trainer or anybody that wants to be in the fitness industry, that would be a great experience because like you said, if you get to deal with 18-year-olds all the way up to 80 plus year olds and everywhere in between, disabled people, one leg, one arm, whatever, like all everywhere in between. Like you learn a lot because one thing you learn about training is that, I mean, every individual is an individual. Like certainly there are patterns that everyone fits into, and most people can fit into those patterns and fit into that groove. But then, of course, there are those nuances. And, same goes with nutrition. That's why so many people fail in nutrition because they just try the newest diet instead of recognizing and figuring out the thing that works for them. Like what's the thing that works for you? How is it lower carbs or lower fat or higher protein or lower protein? Like what is it that works for you instead of listening to the recent article that said, "Oh, high fat's going to kill you. Oh, high carbs are going to kill you. Oh, high protein is going to kill you." And then you can't eat anything. So, anyway, that was a little bit of a tantrum, but nonetheless, that would be a great experience because it just gives you like a well-rounded view of human beings and be able to adapt to the humans or
Yeah.
adapt to their abilities.
It was perfect, man. Because I'd recommend any young trainer get a situation if they could like that, because you get to find out who you vibe with the best, who you like working with the best. Like any young man coming, I thought I was going to work with athletes, right? That's what I thought I wanted to do, and then I got the opportunity. I was also working at the hospital, working training sports teams and things like that. So I was and doing in-home personal training. So I had three jobs. You know how it is in the fitness world. You got to hustle. Uh, but I got to train all these different populations, and I found out that I enjoyed training women over all of them. They're always the best clients. They look better, they smell better, they're better, they're tougher, they don't
All
travel as much
facts.
for work.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had all the best clients were always women. So man, you get to figure that out. Coming out of college, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yes, I would say those are all very true. Women are definitely tougher than men.
Which that's why they have the
Women
kids.
Yeah, I mean that's it. It is so true. Like you get a woman in a weight room, you get a man in the weight room. The man will be on the ground much quicker than the woman. They will start complaining sooner than the woman. They will stop sooner. Like it is very true. Our members, let's see, our membership was probably 80 to 85% women, something along those lines. That was purely happenstance, to be totally honest. And I guess that goes to show that women are also willing to take that first step to actually go and do something that is harder and challenging.
Yeah, they're more
So
coachable. That's why I like them. They're more coachable. Every guy, I'm sure you saw this, is going to put 225 on the bench press, whether they can do it or not, because that's what he benched in high school. So he's going to throw it back on there. So yeah, women are
no
very
doubt.
much they're much more coachable. That's why I like.
Yeah, very true. What the next step look like after that? So you went there, you did your internship, ended up getting a job. You were also working a couple other jobs during that same time. What the next transition look like?
So the next transition, a few years later, I had a son, and working three jobs and not seeing him growing up was not the plan I wanted to live for my life. So I figured something had to change. I was working, basically 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., going to school, grad school, in between all that. So I had to figure out, hey, something's got to change. So I decided to start a business, on the side of all that. So
Perfect timing.
hey, that's right. Why not? Why not? See, I talked about energy earlier. Man, I used to have all the energy. So, but yes, I said I started with one class, one 5:30 a.m. class. I cut out a couple of personal training clients. So I'm gonna try this. So I did that for a couple of years, just doing one class and just putting all the money back into the business, build my clientele. These were large group classes. We could fit 35 people in one class. So one class was pretty good income for that. And then eventually add another class. I was able to quit the full-time job and then the part-time job and all the in-between jobs, and eventually transition to a full-time business.
Very nice. How long did it take? How long did that transition take? A couple years?
About 3 years, yep, all told.
Hmm.
Probably could have done a little bit earlier, but I was kind of scared.
Scared, of course. Yeah.
Quitting that government job where you get paid every 2 weeks, you got 401k, you got retirement, all these different things. You get paid whether you're good at it or not, by the way.
Very
you know,
true.
so I
Very
was kind of
true.
scary. I remember coming home and telling my wife, like, "Hey, guess what I did today?" And I quit my job. She's like, "What?" So yeah, that was.
Whoa.
But luckily, her job, we could get insurance through there. That's a huge one. So we had the insurance, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna make this thing work now." Desperation will create some hustle, that's for sure. So my business skyrocketed after I quit that job, and I could put all of it in, have an effort into it. Man, you got to make it work. You will make it work. So, yeah, it was about 3 years though, all told.
Good for you, by the way. That's incredible. I didn't realize that you did that. That's I think more people could and I believe should do that. I think many people are scared of the idea of working for themselves, of entrepreneurship. A lot of it has to do with the benefits that those kinds of jobs or corporate jobs do offer. What you start to recognize is if you do some calculations, then you can figure out what you need to make up for those benefits. And that's what most people miss is, if you just take it some time and go, okay, well, here's what I'm paying, here's what I would be paying. So what would I need to make in order for that to happen over here to get the same benefits over here? So you can do those calculations and figure that out. But like you said, for you, your wife had a job and you were able to just jump over to her and gather some of her benefits. But um,
Yeah, you make a
that's
great point. I agree with, man. There's so many people that could do this. If I can do it, I guarantee you can do it. I didn't know anything about business. I had a business minor in college, didn't pay attention, never thought I owned a business. I wish I'd have paid attention. Probably got straight C's across the board to get that business minor. I was just taking business classes because I need to keep my student loans. That's the only reason I was taking them. So, man, but I made it work somehow, right? So if you actually know anything about business and you're halfway, organized, which I am not, I guarantee you can do some great things. You just got to jump off that cliff, though. That's the hardest part.
very true. When what when did you decide to jump? Like what from and it doesn't have to be numbers. What was the percentage of your like business income relative to the rest of it? Because here's what I explain to people is like at a certain point you got to let this part go because like you said you got to then put your attention here so that this can start to go up. And once you do this, drop this off so that you can put your attention over here and then that can start to skyrocket. You'll make up that gap. But people are scared to have the gap. Like there's going to be a time where there's a gap between what you're making with your side business currently and what you're making with your job, whatever, if this is a full-time or part-time job, whatever this looks like. If that total is this, whatever, and you drop that off, at what level did you decide to drop that off? Was it a 60% gap? Was like, what did that look like?
It was probably about a $10,000 difference.
Yeah.
And, I was like, man, I could definitely make that up. I'm going to bet
Yeah.
on myself. One
Yeah.
thing I will do is I will bet on myself. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know I can make this work at $10,000. If not, man, I don't need much in life. Right.
Mhm.
If, I got a roof over my head, some food on the table. I don't need, fancy cars, big houses, all those types of things. We lived pretty frugally at the time, still do. So, I was like, I will make this work. If I got to live, in a little shed somewhere, I'm going to make this work until we can get that money back. Because it was more lifestyle for me that I wanted to be there with my son when I watch. I didn't want to watch him grow up in pictures and videos. I want to be there for his first steps and all these things. I didn't want to miss any of that. So I was willing to take any kind of pay cut to do that. So, but luckily, it wasn't 10,000, not a huge difference in that time. So we were able to make it work.
Very nice. Do you remember how long it took you to make that up?
Oh, like that,
Quick,
it seemed like just a
quick.
few months, just a
I would
few
imagine it
months.
was quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't, working 40 hours somewhere else, you put that 40 hours into your business,
I'm
man.
telling you.
If you don't grow, there's something wrong.
Exactly. And that's what people don't understand. And I love that you emphasize that part that anybody can do it. Now, I'm sure you have more knowledge and more intuition than you're currently giving yourself credit for. I'm positive about that. But for sure, like it doesn't, if you have some basic level of skills to do some like basic administrative tasks, to keep some level of, things in sequence and you're comfortable sometimes getting rejected, like if you just have some basic skills, then you can own a business and I guarantee it can cover whatever income you're currently having. Like a business doesn't have to be, I think a lot of people think about it in terms of maybe like having employees and so on and so forth, and they're scared of that part of it. Like certainly when you start to get into employees, especially multiple employees, one or two, no big deal. But you start getting into multiple employees, like, it can be, they can start getting touch and go pretty quick. But like if it's just you or maybe you and one other person, then it becomes much more manageable. Like you can do so much more and then it's in your hands. And then you don't have to go, well, the boss isn't giving me a raise. Like you're the boss. So
Yeah.
you decide if you want a raise or if you get a raise. And you just said you made up a $10,000 gap in a couple of months because you got to focus all your energy on your business. And I think if a lot of people would just give themselves more credit, then they could go and step out and do something like that and have a more fulfilled life and enjoy themselves a lot better with what they're doing.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I didn't have a financial background, so I hired someone for that. I was smart enough to do that. That's one thing I know. What I don't know, I'm gonna hire it
Yeah,
out. It
for
paid
sure.
back tenfold. So I was able to keep overhead really low. That was a big thing for me, especially in the beginning. So and then I brought in a financial advisor who was also my accountant, who kind of rolled those two things together and gave me some great advice on what to do here and there. Just that'd be a big thing for me because that first year I did not, and man, when taxes came around, biggest check I'd written in my life. That
Yeah,
one hurt. That one
yeah,
hurt. So I was like, I cannot do this again. I mean, I'm glad I saved my money. I'm glad I put it all back in the business. Otherwise, I'd have paid, it felt like I paid everyone I made right back to the government. So if you're starting out and you don't know that stuff, hire someone that does.
yeah, and I would say that that's probably the biggest gap for a lot of people is what you're talking about right there, the financial part of it. Having a bookkeeper slash accountant to some degree, which you could find a good one and pay them monthly, and generally you might pay between $200 and $500 a month, something to that effect, maybe 5 to 8. It just depends on how in depth you want it, depends on how in depth your business is, depends on a number of things, but. I mean, for the gym, I think we were paying $400, maybe $500 a month for a gym with 5 employees, and um, and that included bookkeeping and I think a yearly tax return.
Yeah,
So you're talking about $6,000 a year for bookkeeping and tax return, which in the beginning is tough because you're just getting started, but it is definitely worth it if that's what you're scared of. If that's what you're
absolutely.
scared of,
Yeah,
it is definitely, definitely, no doubt worth it because you can just set that aside. Not that I mean, you should pay attention to it for sure, but you don't have to worry about the bookkeeping part. You don't have to worry about keeping it all together. You don't have to worry about keeping the numbers and, whatever, quarterly tax, this, that, and the other thing. You can focus on the business.
right.
So
The
that's,
hourly rate I would pay them versus how long it would take me to do all that.
yeah,
Oh, it was an easy choice for me.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So that's cool. You transitioned slowly, made your way over to owning your own business, and then it's just been off to the races since then. So that's what you've been doing. You've been focusing on that since then.
Yeah, that's it. It's year 15. We just marked 15 years this past summer. So, man, it's been amazing.
Cool, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What has been your biggest or maybe top three lessons you've learned over that time? How about yourself? Like where have you grown the most over that period of time?
Oh man, public speaking is a huge one. I am an introvert by nature. I'm an extrovert by profession, is what I tell people. As I can do this stuff. Like I went to a networking event yesterday, crushed it. I'm just going to tell you, I crushed it. But I came
Well
home
done.
and took a nap right after it, and I had to take a nap. So I can do these things. I mean, I found out that I can do it, but man, in the beginning it was so painful. I'd go to a networking event and just stand off by the corner and not know what to do. Now, I mean, I'll put myself out there because my whole thing when I wake up every morning, there's somebody that needs what I do, and it's my job to find that person. So I got to do whatever it takes. I'm not comfortable doing half the things I do. So my thing now is ready, shoot, aim. Because I knew what did I wanted to do with my business for almost an entire year, and I sat on it. I didn't, what's the location? What's the logo going to look like? What do I need to do here and there? All these little things that don't matter at all. If I'd have just put it out there and fixed it, I would have been a year ahead. I was going to make mistakes. I made the mistakes anyway. I waited a year and made the same mistakes, right? But now I'll put things out there that, about 80%, 85% complete, right? That are pretty good because it's never going to be perfect. Just going to put it out there. If you do like I did and sit there and try to make it perfect, you'll sit there and you may never do it. A lot of people don't do it. So if right now I'll put things out there and fix it as I go, and if it's garbage, then I'll scrap it, right? But if I've never tried, I don't know. So I'll be able to go in and be able to write some books. I never thought I'd author books, so that's another thing I did is I had to start writing. Write an email newsletter to keep people on my list and keep them engaged. And I'm not a writer. I don't come from a writing background. In fact, here combines two things about me. So coming out of high school, I literally did not know how to spell business. I thought it was Buisness, and nobody corrected me. Thanks a lot, public schools. I
Yeah,
mentioned I'm from Alabama, right? We're only like
yeah,
49,
for
50
sure.
in education. There's a reason for that.
There we go.
And by the way, I'm old too, so no spell check. Nobody told me that. So I get to college and I wrote something about business. Or like, say, count some points off. I was like, what's wrong with this? And they showed me how to spell it. I was like, that's busyness. That ain't business. So if I told you that anyone could do it, that's what I'm talking about. So, these things like that I go back there and I look and it's like, man, what happens? But if you stick with it, and I don't want to read anything from when I started. I do not, because if you stick with something, you do it often. If you get better at it, better at it. I was terrible at it. You got to be willing to be bad at something if you ever want to get good at it. So I was willing to be bad. That's one thing I am. I'll bet on myself, and I'm willing to be bad at things to be good at them. Because, hey, man, I've just learned it over and over that eventually I can get these things. I'm kind of a slow learner sometimes. It takes me to get a while, but and just the main thing as far as business side, like I didn't have the business acumen a lot of people have, but I take care of my people and I care for them more than anybody else. Like these are the people that are putting food on my table and help me raise my son and pay for my house. You think I'm not going to take care of them? And literally, my mom is in the class. So I'm going to treat you just like I would treat my mom or my sister or my cousin come to my class. Like you are family when you come to my class. And I've been to weddings and funerals and all these different things. And it's outside. I want to be, I want to steal Starbucks thing. There's home, there's work, and then there's classes where our fitness classes, right? That's your three things. That's what I wanted to be. So I wanted to kind of steal Starbucks thing that, hey, this isn't just a fitness class. You'll leave a fitness class, but you're not going to leave a family. We at least we take care of each other, look out for each other. We've done so much fundraising over the years and taking care of people, tornado victims, and homeless people, and all these different things. And just because I have a little bit of a platform, right? So I'm going to use that thing as much as I'm going to stretch that platform as far as I can. So there's been so many lessons over the years, but that's kind of the top three somewhere in there. If someone could sift through there, they're in there somewhere.
Hmm. That's good. I got the chills at the end. That's good. Anytime you can build a community of people instead of just have clients, then I think that's more profound than just doing something like I said, just being a personal trainer. People would leave a personal trainer, but people have a harder time leaving a community of like-minded people. It's just much more challenging. But certainly, I resonate also with the public speaking part, the writing part, all of the above. I think I failed English twice in college, definitely at least once, maybe twice. I can't really remember. Um, and it's the same. Like I literally that could have been my story, like what you just said. I went to what are those? What's the public speaking classes? Not classes, but anyway, whatever it is. What's it? Toastmasters. My
Toastmaster.
mind's like,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, my mind's spinning in circles. So I went to Toastmasters. I did that, and then I joined the local Chamber of Commerce, and I would go and I'd present to some of the small seminars that they would do there, and I would do that. And then, like you said, I would just constantly push myself. If a local high school reached out to go speak to a class, I'd go speak to the class. Like I would make sure to step into those situations that I did not like at all.
Nope.
All of my clients who knew me when I first started, which would have been probably 15 to 17 years ago today, when I first started, they all would tell you, if you met them today, that when they first met me, all I did was grunt at them. Like that was my communication back then, was just grunting. Uh-huh. Yep. Like that was it. Now I still grunt, or I still communicate and grunting at times, but I think I'm a little better and people can understand me a little better now. But like I said, I've built myself into this. I've grown into this. And writing is the same exact way.
Yeah, I think that's across the board. It's things that you keep doing, you keep pushing yourself and putting yourself out there. And man, I bet I gave some awful talk. I probably just blacked it out of my mind. Like, oh my gosh, it was painful. It was painful. Gosh, man, I look back on some of those things I did, but and then also I think it actually works. People want to put a face to a name with business. You're not just some faceless business. It's like, here's this guy that owns this business. He's coming to talk to my kid's class. Like these aren't his clients. He's just doing it to serve the community. And that's been a whole thing for me, is just serving other people. Like I said, it's part of my thing, and that's just the way to do it. Just give back. Because this is my community. I grew up here. I've lived other places, but I moved back home, and man, I love this place. So I'm gonna serve. These are my neighbors. So I'm gonna go out there and serve them as well as I can.
That's cool. Um, Very nice. So you said you've authored a couple of books. I know of your most recent book, and I also found your other book. I think it's also called Relentless Positivity.
Yeah, that's it. You're seeing a
Uh,
theme, right? Yeah.
yeah, right. Very nice. I like it. I'm a big fan of branding, so I appreciate it very much. So tell me a little bit about Relentless Positivity. I don't know as much about that one.
Yeah, that one is because you got to call your book something, right? And I was like, well, I'm gonna just call it what I want to call it. So it's mainly just it's a weight loss exercise book, but mainly kind of on the mindset side of things, which I think is the most important piece. A lot of people leave out of it. Kind of figuring it, and I do it through stories as well. They talk about facts tell, but stories sell. So if it's the greatest information in the world, but it's boring, it's dry, people aren't going to read that. And it's kind of short, broken up chapters where you can read one chapter and just in one sitting because people's attention spans not what they used to be.
Yeah.
Mine's not either. It's okay. So you can hit a chapter here, and they're all separate chapters. They all a couple of them work together, but it's mainly just hey, if you want to thumb through it and look at this, and well, what do you mean this guy grew up in a trailer park, and that's how his fitness business kind of got started. What's up with that? So you can kind of look through these. It's just kind of a I don't know. It's kind of look on the lighter side of things, but there's some deeper stuff in there as well. Just kind of a different take on a lot of the different things, how I help my clients lose weight and get in shape and all these different things.
Hmm. Very cool. Yeah, especially today, there's so much information available out there. It's hard to sift through it all. Um, but most definitely, I mean, ironically, health and fitness are the most basic things out there. Like health is the most basic thing out there. Like there's nothing complex about it. It's very simple. It's actually it's so simple that I'm surprised that it is a multi-billion dollar industry, but it's a multi-billion dollar industry because people make it more complex than what it really is. Like in exercise, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. You you could there's five things you need to do to stay fit. And that's about it. For nutrition, there's two or three rules, maybe more, maybe five rules you need to follow, and that's it. Like and if you do those things, then you're going to be in the top 10% healthiest people in the country. Like if you just do five things in your fitness and five things in nutrition, like you'll be in the top 10%.
For sure. Yeah, you talk about information. If you're listening right now, when this is finished, go Google diet and see how many hits you get on Google. It'll be in the billions probably. And then you're going to there's 1 million diets I could follow. When, like you said, there's some basic principles that work for everybody. I mean, there's some few and far between. You got some special medical considerations, but for most of us, we follow these things. So that's what I try to do for my clients to simplify it. And then, hey, maybe you just want to start with one habit and just snowball from there. Because some people, if you here's what you need to do, it's like, oh, they panic. So if you can just start, hey, well, can we get in 30 minutes of movement today? Not a workout. Can you just move your body some way for 30 minutes today? And it doesn't have to be at once. It can be cumulative. Maybe a 5-minute walk out to the mailbox or something, 10-minute walk around the block, stand up a little more, start there, start somewhere. I think a lot of people, they get panicked on like what I did when I had 50 pounds to lose, like, oh my gosh, where do I start? But hey, everything starts with just that one thing. If you've ever read Atomic Habits, it talks about this guy that he went to the gym every day for a long time and just went to the gym. He didn't do any exercise. He just created the habit of going to the gym. And then once that was a rock solid habit, then he started working out. Eventually he loses 100 pounds, but it all started with adding that one habit in and layering them on from there. So if you can start kind of simple, you can get ahead of a lot of people, like you said.
For sure. And then you wrote your most recent book, which was just released a couple months ago, I believe. Um, who you are is not who you're going to be.
Pretty
Is that
close.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's called You're Not Who You're Going to Be.
Yeah.
My background is also coaching football. So I've coached football for 15 years at the middle school level. So I got the opportunity to preach a sermon. I'm not a preacher, but once again, man, I will do things. I will try things out. I'll see what happens. And I was doing some research for this sermon. I came across this stat that the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds was suicide. And man, that just got in my heart. It wouldn't leave. You ever had those things that they just stick in there. And I tried to run away from it. Like, I don't have time for this. I can't. Somebody should do something. Guess what, knucklehead? You're somebody. You better do something. So I decided to write this book. I started a mentoring program. So the title of the book is "You're Not Who You're Going to Be," because I work with these kids, and middle school football is a crazy world. You'll have a kid that's 6 feet tall. He's under 180 pounds. He got 6 pack abs. He's got a mustache. Right next the kid the same age, right next to him, same class, will weigh 50 pounds, and his arms look like toothpicks, and his voice squeaks when he talks. And these are the same age and the same team. And the 50-pound kid looks at the 180-pound kid like, man, I can never be like him. I'm just going to be stuck like this, a small weakling the rest of my life. And, because that's what you see. Like, well, if I'm not like him, then I'm not going to be anybody. But that kid has so much growing he's going to do and learning and all these different things that's going to happen in the next 5, 6, 7 years. It's amazing the progress these kids can make. They can't see it. I can see it. You can see it, but they can't see that. So just helping them realize that, hey, what's going to happen in the future? Because I try to use my son as an example to a lot of them. My son was naturally tall, real tall kid in middle school, but coordination was not invited to the party. You get one or the other usually. You're either a small coordinated kid or the tall kid who looks like a deer on ice. So on the basketball team, he's, sitting the bench a lot of times. He's a tall kid, but, if you can't dribble and shoot, he can't use you, right? So, uh, but eventually, he stuck with it. He kept working at it. He knew he could get better if he kept working on these haps and doing these things, working on his ball hand, working on his shooting, working on the skills of basketball, and kept believing in himself. Now he's a Division I basketball player playing at the Air Force Academy, But back in there, if you would have just imagined at 12 years old that I'm going to be stuck as this kid that can't dribble or do anything, where does he go in life, right? So just helping him realize that, hey, you're not who you're going to be. You're going to be you can be so many things in life. It may not be an athlete, but there's so many things you can do. Whether it's or not even through football. If they're in school and they take a class and they do bad in it, oh gosh, I'm not smart. I'm not very good at this. I'm never going to amount to anything or whatever it is. You're not the prettiest girl in school or the smartest kid in school. That's what kind of people get credit for. That's what people get praise. I like to differentiate between praise and encouragement. Praise is for the pretty girl in school, the best looking guy. They just woke up. That's what they are.
Mhm.
Right? They didn't do anything. It's great. That's awesome. We all like the homecoming king and all these things. But what about that kid that busted his butt just to play 5 plays a game or something like that? He went from playing not at all, sitting the bench the whole game to getting in there. And man, just that's the kid you want to encourage him. Effort, attitude, and effort. That's the things I encourage, right? Because those are the things they can control and improve on rather than, hey man, if you're like me and you're just born ugly, you're stuck. Hey man, it's all right. You can still be somebody. It's all right. You put hats on and things like that, grow a
That's right.
beard. You can make things happen. But
That's right.
it's kind of helping them realize that, hey, you got it. You got a whole big life ahead of you.
That's good, man. It's not very often that someone runs into a problem and then sprints after the problem, right? You find something, you find a hole, you fill the hole to try and do something about it. So that's incredible. Also, the statistic is incredible as well. As you explain it and as you talk about it, it makes sense because that is a challenging part of life. I was definitely the 6 foot ogre, not ogre, but the 6 foot. I'm 5'10", 5'10". But I was 5'10" in seventh grade. So like, or maybe eighth grade. So whatever, 13, 14 years old. Um, I was I was taller than a lot of kids. I was muscular. I was 175 pounds or something like that. So I was one of those lucky ones who didn't end up on that side of it. But I can certainly see, like, because it's such a weird age range, and because there's so much discrepancy there, I could definitely see how that would be challenging for someone who feels like they're behind.
Oh yeah, and the hormones are going crazy. They don't know what they're doing, especially boys. I had
Yeah.
a kid throw his helmet one time. I was like, "Man, what are you doing?" And he literally didn't know why he did it. He just did it, right? He's just off the spine. I'm gonna throw this helmet because I'm mad. A lot of times they just do these impulsive things and don't know what's going on. I mean, it's crazy. And these kids, they'll have 1,000 friends online and nobody sit with their lunch. There's a lot of, if you look at the stats, like the loneliness stats on kids is so horrible, man. They just feel so alone even though surrounded by people physically, they feel like they don't have anyone to confide in, someone they can believe in them, and things like this. That, especially after the pandemic, I was coaching 10 years before and 5 years since. Somewhere I'm not good at math, whatever it is, but there's a difference. There's definitely a marked difference in the kids that went through the pandemic, and you can also tell the kids that were just kind of left to kind of figure it out by themselves and sit on your iPad all day long or watch TV because parents had to work too. They still got to work and they can't take care of these things. The daycares are closed and all these things that were helping them out. It was a weird time, so there's a big difference, kind of in the kids pre and post COVID. So the loneliness thing, though, man, that's the main thing what I do with my mentoring program. 95% of what I do is listening and just letting them know I care, and that goes so far with these kids.
And and like you said, I think this is more prevalent since after COVID, but social media has been around now for like what, 15, 12 years, maybe 10 years, like super popular. MySpace was a thing back in the day, but again, lot of people listening to this won't appreciate MySpace for what it was. I know you can appreciate that. But MySpace was not social media. Like it was a much different thing. Like social media as it is today is what, 10 years old or so. So it's ironic that in a space where it's so easy to get your voice out there and so easy to talk and so easy to be connected to so many people, it's also much easier to just feel lost or to
Um,
feel like you're just one, you're alone, like you're amongst nobody. And it's very ironic and very weird situation to be in.
Oh, the two huge things I see with it is comparison. One, because everybody's putting their highlight reel on there, they're putting filters on there, all these different things. Man, you could look like you're jacked if you're not. You can look like you're the most beautiful person in the world, even if you're not. And you can do all these things, and then some kids see that and they think that's the 100% truth, and they think, well, look at me, I could never be like that. Or they see these people that go on these awesome vacations or whatever it is, they're comparing themselves with these kids, and they feel so much worse about themselves because that's not. I'll never be like that. That's not me. And then on the other side, bullying. When I was growing up, and you were growing up at 3 o'clock. If you were getting bullied, got to go home, get a little break, come back, and maybe you may get bullied again tomorrow, but you get at least to go home, and have a little break. Now they can bully you 24/7, 365. It could be some dude in another country you've never met talking trash about you, making fun of you, all these different things, man. So so I tell, all the parents that I work with, keep those phones out of their room at night. It's so dangerous with predators, number one. That's the number one thing. If you talk to anyone that's in any kind of child predator situation, they will tell you keep them away from those phones. They can get those. That's how they're getting through the kids. And it's at night because when my son was in middle school, he would get text messages and social media messages at 3 a.m. on a school night. And we wonder why kids aren't learning in school. They're misbehaving. They're up because these things are tempting, man. I'm addicted to my phone. I can admit it. If it was in my room, I'd probably look at it, right? I can't imagine being 12, 13, 14, having that thing sitting there. Of course, I'm going to be on it. So keeping that, there's no reason they need it in their room. If you got one, I would love to hear it, but I don't hear any reason why you need that. And another one, put some kind of monitoring on that thing. We use the Bark app, which I recommend. It can tell you, it filters everything that comes in. It tells you, okay, hey, here's a mess. Someone must be about violence or sex or drugs or alcohol. And it'll give you a message like, hey, he's getting these messages on his phone. You need to check it out. So monitoring their phone use, but to keep them off those phones and off social media as long as you can ward them off, man. That's a big thing.
For sure. I can only imagine. I don't have kids yet. I will have kids, but I can only imagine what that will be like when that comes around. And on the kid side, I can only imagine how it is. Now, of course, when you grow up with it, it's like it feels normal, so you just don't know any different. But I can only imagine how it is. But those are great suggestions. Most definitely, adults, you keep your damn phones out of your room as well because it's just you don't need it. It's keeping you from getting good quality sleep, which will also help you be less stressed and less overweight. So
Right. Get you an alarm clock. You don't need your phone for alarm, but you can buy an actual alarm clock. I've heard that excuse too. I use it for my alarm clock. Get you a real alarm clock.
yeah, you can go old school. You get an alarm clock for $5, $10 at most. So you can go
That's
get
right.
yourself a nice old school alarm clock. Go down to the what, not the throwaway store, but whatever, the store down the road where they got the Goodwill store. Um, you get one for 75 cents, I'm sure, at Goodwill.
There you
So
go.
go buy yourself one. Um, Joe, dude, I appreciate you. Super enlightening conversation. I'm glad I got to learn a lot more about your past and about how you came through and came up to through the business and how you did that and everything. Super cool. Before we shut it down, though, what's one thing that you would say to someone struggling right now?
Oh man, if you're at where I was, there's man, there is joy on the other side of your pain. I guarantee it. Whatever you're going through, it's gonna get better. It may not seem like that. It may see some days that you may never see some light, but I guarantee you, you just keep going. There's people that care about you. There's people that love you. There's people that want to help you. There's people that will listen to you. Don't be scared to reach out. I guarantee you, you are worth it. We need you here on Earth. Hey, here's what I believe that everyone here is put on this earth for one reason. They can only something that only they can do, and that's you. So we need you. So stick around and see what that thing is.
Hmm, beautiful. Joe, I appreciate you, brother. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Fitandpositive.com. It's my website right there. If you want to check out the books, they're on Amazon. If you check them out on there, you can also click the links on my website, but that's probably the best place right there.
Sounds good, brother. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.